What is up, everybody? Okay, there's a lot going on. Do you guys remember that time when we had a presidential debate where people just got on and screamed at each other for an hour and a half? That was less than a week ago. Okay, in some ways that seems like a nightmare that never actually happened in real life, but or a million years ago, less than a week ago. All right. President Trump has COVID now. I've got all these questions on my last podcast that I'm going to intertwine into the next two Cooper Stuff episodes dealing with this question. Will there be another civil war in America? I wish we were talking about civil war like Captain America, but we're not. We're talking about stuff that actually really matters. I'm going to explain some of the ideologies, but the world is getting so crazy that you can't even parody it anymore. It's so crazy. Do you guys remember that time that I said you'll get to a place in society where you're going to have to get on your knees and repent to people who you have never met for all the terrible things that have happened? And people are like, John, that's right-wing conspiracy. That'll never happen.
Yeah. I work for Black Lives Matter. I'm sorry that I scared you. That's okay. But since I work for that company, my CEO has told me to come out today and to bring you on your knees because you have white privilege. So if they see that a white person is getting on their knees, that shows solidarity for the situation. And could you just please apologize for your white privilege? Just apologize.
I am. I'm trying to think of the right words to say because that's a big thing to say.
It's big.
Comes from.
It's large in this country.
I'm incredibly sorry that.
With this country, we have that president, Donald Duck, that clown in office. He's brought a lot of bigotry, and you're not a part of it, right?
No, God, jeez.
No.
That would never happen. It wouldn't happen, John. You're being extreme. So apparently, this guy actually doesn't even work for BLM. So it's kind of a gag, all right? Or as Chris Farley would say, it was a hoax. So I have to give this guy the first slow clap of the day. He has literally made my week. It's so wonderful to see. Thank you so much for that. Are we going to see civil war? Dude, we're already in a civil war, but it is a war of ideology and revolution, and we are being lied to about what it's all about. I'm going to uncover it right up in here on Cooper Stuff. Cooper Stuff! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Cooper Stuff. It's so cool to see you guys again. All right, we have a two-part series. I am more passionate about next week's episode, but we got to lay some groundwork getting into it. What do we even mean when we say, is there a civil war in America? First thing I want to say is this, before we jump in, I've been reading comments on Cooper Stuff. There were some comments on last week's episode that really moved me. The first one that did not move me that I should mention, people are complaining that I touched my hat too much. I didn't do it, you see. Come on. I'm going to try my best not to touch my hat on this one, okay? Then somebody was like, yeah, and his beard. I can't stop touching my beard. Leave it alone. All right. But I did see some comments that really actually did move me. A couple of questions, some were on, they said, hey, my church is doing white fragility. We're going through that in church. And I think somebody said, I didn't feel really good about this, but I didn't know exactly where to stand on it. We're going to get into some of those issues. I want you to know that I saw your questions or your comments. Some people were also saying, hey, me and my kids differ on these issues when it's coming to how we deal with the race problem in America, yada, yada. I saw your comments and I appreciate them a lot. I'm going to save that for part 2. Because you see, this is going to be called Civil War in America, part 1. Part 2 is going to be Civil War in the church. Now, that is what I am really concerned about. The reason I'm doing America first is because a lot of the same things that we're seeing happen in our culture are the exact same things happening in the church. And that's what we are going to jump into. I also want to say a huge thank you to people who have pre-ordered my book. Thank you so much. I'm telling you, my book is so pertinent for what is happening right now. All the things we keep seeing happen, I'm like, this is the right book for this time. So check it out, johnlcooper.com/awake, because everything we're seeing in culture is this. No one knows what the truth is. And there's some reasons for that, and we're going to talk about it. But we can't even agree on things like like normal stuff. What color is grass? What color is the sky? It feels like up is down and down is up. Red is blue. Blue is purple, right? And nobody can agree on anything because we have absolutely no confidence that there is such a thing as objective truth. And that's what I wrote in my book about. So check it out. JohnLCooper.com/awake. All right, we are going to jump into this. I hope this is helpful for some people. Will there be a civil war in America? Now, first of all, we have to define a few things. There are a million different interpretations of what this even means. It's really confusing. If I don't know a thing, I'm just going to say, hey, that's above me. Don't have opinions on that stuff. Let me say one of the things that I do not have an opinion on. Some people would say, hey, we're already seeing violence. In other words, is there civil war? It depends on what you mean with your level of violence. However, we're obviously already seeing some violence, right? I mean, the city of Portland's had like 70 days straight, protests with some fires and violence. And then as we saw in Kenosha, like I said, down the street, now we had violence, buildings being burned down, all the car lots, windows, yada, yada. And then you have the other side show up, which was whether it's the militia or people protecting their own private property, which you've seen in America. It's not just Kenosha. You've seen that in other places. Yeah, you're probably going to see more of that. I'm not smart enough to say if I think that's going to get worse. Is it going to be like all out violence on the streets in every city in America while this huge civil war happens? That's way above my pay grade. I do not have opinions on that. I will say I assume that the protests are going to keep going no matter who gets in office, I assume. I also assume that we will see some of that violence continue. I don't know if it escalates or not. Sorry, I don't have answers for that. So it depends on what you mean by civil war. If what you mean is like every city in America is set on fire and, bullets in the streets, I kind of doubt that, but that's above my pay grade. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about a civil war that is happening now of ideology and revolution, all right? And I'll say this. The reason we know we're kind of already in this, there's so much to even mention about it. Like, for instance, we had, even the 2016 election was contested from the beginning. We had the Russia collusion stuff. I'm not even saying I'm taking sides on it. I'm throwing it all out there. In other words, people on all sides don't know if they have real confidence in what's happening in America. And that will obviously lead to, destabilizing the country. So now on both sides, we had Hillary Clinton, just a few months ago, say that Biden, if it comes in that he loses, that he should not concede because it was all rigged. Then you got President Trump saying that, basically the same thing. Basically saying, no, if it's not fair, then no, I can't, that election, we have the mail-in voting. Everything is kind of screwed right now. It's really confusing. So I don't think that it's crazy to be asking the question, will that war, will the violence, I guess you would say, will the destabilization keep occurring until we go all the way down to where there's no country left? All above my pay grade. I'm here to talk about a civil war in terms of ideology. And this is what I think is really crazy going on. I think we're in the middle of it right now. Can you feel it? I bet you can. I bet you can sense it. Okay, so my analysis on what's going on. Here's this. I think that the media is lying to us, okay? Because the media, you know what? What do they do? What do they do? Suck! The media sucks, all right? They are not on your side, and I'm going to explain it. If you ask most people in America, with this civil war happening, what's going on? What most people kind of think is that it's sort of like a race war, but when you say race war, that makes it sound like it's black against white people. I don't think that that's accurate, but what they mean by the race war is, on one side, you have people that want to dismantle systemic racism, get rid of racism in America, and on the other side, you have the people who don't care about racism. Now, I believe that is an absolute false binary. I do not think that's what's going on. I think that most everyone in America wants to see racism go away. Why do I think that? Well, I just showed you the video. There are people on the streets bowing down, repenting. We got church pastors, white pastors, bowing down and praying to black pastors to forgive them. Can we use black people as the mediator for forgiveness? Christ is the mediator, guys. So there's all sorts of things going on because race is not really what is happening in the Civil War. Race is being used as the bludgeon, all right? It's being disguised as a race war, but it actually isn't, because it's effective. That's why, because people in America, white people, are ashamed of our history. We are rightly ashamed of racism. It was horrible. It was our original sin. It's the thing we just wish it would go away. Please let it go away, because we hate it so bad. People in America generally want to see more equity. We want to see the poor, no matter what color they are. We want to see the poor, raise up. We want to see their economic lives get better. We want to see better health care. Everybody in America wants those things. You'll be very hard pressed to find white people in America who are just kind of like, I don't really care about racism. It doesn't actually matter to me if other people hurt. That is not the way that most people at this point in time in 2020, most people were not raised that way. Most people were raised in America. I'm talking about white people alive today. Most white people were raised today to revere Martin Luther King Jr. Most white people were raised to know that there is a sense of all of the evil things that happened, and we should be looking for ways to make that right. That is just in general, okay? So because of that, this civil war that's happening is not actually about race, but the media wants you to think it's about race. Because really what it's about a revolution against, wait for it, not black and white people and not rich and poor people. It is a revolution against Americanism. And I know some people are going to be like, here we go. He's going to get right wing, whatever. I don't know. I hate when people say that because it's not actually true. This isn't saying that you have to love America. I'm not saying that anybody that doesn't say America is the greatest country in the world. I'm not even saying that, all right? I'm talking about the ideas that America was built on, all right? The things that made America unique, the things that are our core values, the pillars of Americanism, is exactly what the Civil War is about. Because the other side wants to see those things toppled over. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that, just so you don't think I'm being some kind of partisan hack on here, that this is all about politics. Yes, it's a little about politics, but it's about politics, it's about culture, it's about ideology. And because it's about those things, it will absolutely be about religion as well, which we're going to get to, all right? You see that? I almost touched my hat. I almost did it. I want to so bad, but I'm not gonna. Okay, so what do I mean when I say it's a revolution against Americanism? You could say, in a way, if you really wanted to confuse people, it is a revolution against the ideas that we fought for during the American Revolution. It's a revolution against the American Revolution. All right, now let's get into it. What do I mean when I talk about Americanism? Americanism is built very much on the principle of individual liberty. Right? We all know that. We learn it as a kid. It is built on the principle of individual liberty. And that's not just liberty like from my neighbor, meaning that my neighbor shouldn't come over and take my stuff or force me to believe something I don't want to believe, or enslave me, force me to do work that I don't want to do. It's not just about individual freedom for my neighbor. It's individual freedom from the government. It's to get away from government intrusion, all right? That means the government should not come into my life, tell me how to live, tell me how to raise my kids, take too much of my tax money, take too much of what I made and what I earned. It's about individual freedom, all right? It is the difference between saying, me, John Cooper, I would like to be able to make my own decisions on whether I wear a mask during COVID at my house. I don't think the government should have anything to do with the fact if I wear a mask or not at my house. I do understand that the government wants to protect other things, so maybe I can't go into a Target store and not wear a mask. They have the right to say you can't come in here because of this or the other. But at my house, on my property, the government should not come in and mess around. That is my individual freedom, right? That is the difference between individualism and then the other side, which is collectivism. That is something totally different, and we're going to get into that in a second. But that's what made Americanism very unique. We want to be free of tyrannical government, free from the monarch or whatever. I'm in charge of my fate. I'm in charge of my business. I'm in charge of my family. I don't exist in order to provide the monarch, the king or the whatever, to provide them with power and with goods and whatever. I am in charge of my own life, and I should be the ruler of that. Another thing of individualism would be the idea that I don't want the government telling me what my kids have to learn. I don't want them forcing my kids, for instance, to say that Darwin's evolution is absolute truth, because I don't believe that it's absolute truth. That should be up to me. I don't mind if they learn the theory and they got to make the grades, do what you got to do. But I need to be able to teach my kids about sexual morality, about gender, about marriage, about whatever. That is up to me. That is my individual freedom. All right. And another good example of this. Here you go. When I went to England last year, we played a show in London. I shared this story a while back. I was at a carnival, outside carnival, their Christmas carnival, there's rides and merry-go-rounds and all this stuff. And I was going like vendor to vendor to vendor looking for a Dr. Pepper, which they didn't have, or any soda with sugar. I was like, just give me a Coke. They're like, okay, we have Coke Zero. I was like, no, I just want regular Coke. We don't have it. I said, do you have Pepsi? They say, we have Pepsi Max. Do you have a drink with sugar? And I finally found out, they're like, oh, no, it's not actually allowed here. It's outlawed. You can't drink a full sugar Dr. Pepper or Coke or Pepsi in London at the carnival, because the government has said that's not good for you. And this is about collectivism. It's not just about collectivism. It's also based on an ideology, you see, a philosophy. It's based on a philosophy that the government knows what's best. They know what's best for you. You don't actually know. It's up to them. And it's about what's good for the collective. So for instance, if too many, because they have, subsidized healthcare, like socialized medicine, well, if too many kids are getting diabetes, the government's like, we're not going to keep paying for your healthcare if everybody's knocking back Coca-Colas all day long, because now that is not good for the collective. So we will take some of your individual rights away because it serves the good of the collective rather than you having individual rights. Whether you agree with that principle or not, that is what Americanism is the opposite of that, all right? That's the thing. I should be able to decide how much freaking Dr. Pepper I want up in here. So that is the idea of that, okay? So those two things are very different. In the American idea, because of the philosophy of Americanism, it actually is different than that. It says that the person who is best equipped to make decisions for an individual's life is that individual, not the government, because it is an extension of the original sin of man. It is an extension that men are not good and government is an extension of man, which means that government is going to do evil and wicked stuff because men do evil and wicked stuff. So therefore, the government's bent will be towards evil and wickedness and authoritarianism, and that is bad. So American government exists not to be tyrannical over my individual rights. American government exists in order to protect my God-given rights. Do you see what I'm saying? The two very different things. Okay, so I know some people are like, oh my gosh, John, this just sounds like some kind of history lesson. It's not. You got to think about it in terms of 2020, what's happening right now. This is why the other side is absolutely obsessed with identity politics, because they do not like individualism. So they want to put everybody into an identity group. So in other words, I'm John Cooper, I'm white. I don't just represent John Cooper. I represent all white people. And all white people need to think monolithically. They have to think exactly the same. All black people need to think exactly the same. If you think outside of your identity group, then you are not considered a part of that group. So they want to put everybody into tiny bubbles. It's not about you. It's not about what you think or what you believe, who you are, thinking for yourself. And if you think outside of an identity group, of the color of your skin, gender, sex, sexual orientation, what have you, then you are absolutely ostracized. You are not allowed to do that because it is not about individualism. It's about a different kind of collective thought. Let me show you an example here.
Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice.
Okay, so here it is. We don't need, what'd she say? We don't need brown faces that are not brown voices. And then she goes through the litany of all the things. This is what they mean. You got to get used to hearing the language of the day. When they say a black voice, they don't mean anybody's voice that's black. They mean you have to think a certain exact way. They give you the prescribed things that you must believe, and then they shove it down your throat for propaganda because they need you to think in that one way. Otherwise, you're too individualistic. You're too much of a threat to the thing. Why do they want you to do that? Why do they want you to be a black voice? The reason is, and this is not conspiracy, I'm going to show you what she said, and you'll see what I mean. The reason is because they view these identity groups as power to change culture, power to remake the world in the way that we want it to be made, okay? It can influence outcomes. It can influence reality because this is all based on postmodern thought. They don't believe in truth. They don't believe in morality. They don't believe in reality. They believe in perceived reality, not absolute reality. So they believe if they can get enough majority on their side to be the loudest voice, then all of our perceived reality will be changed and we will get one step closer to this kind of utopia idea. So all these identity groups, they all have to think the same. Black people think the same. Brown people think the same. Gay people think the same. All these identity groups join together to form, Mega Voltron, all right? You got to think about it like little transformers. They're little transformers with power, but they all come together and now they are one voice for change. And if you think I'm making it up, I want you to hear, by the way, this woman that said this is Representative Presley. I want you to hear what she said right before she made the statement I just showed you.
Moving forward, I'm just appealing to all of you to recognize that our destinies and our freedoms are tied. Please do not feed any scarcity mindset. Now is not the time to be territorial about oppression and trauma because this is a coordinated, systemic attack and we are all losing. But the good news is we can all win. But we have to continue to resist and be mobilized and be together and just don't allow them to divide us because our destinies and our freedoms are tied.
Okay, so I hope that you kind of caught that, but what she's saying is this. Guys, this is no time for any of you people to be thinking on your own. You need to think like a voice for whatever identity group that you're with. And this is no time, by the way, if there are any competing agendas. For instance, let's say that you're a gay person and this person is a black straight person. It's no time for the agenda of the black straight person to be fighting against perhaps a white queer person or whatever. It's no time for all of your agendas to clash. This is not about that. We need to join together into mega transformer because we need to create what? Revolution against the prevailing culture, the prevailing hegemony or whatever. They break it up into identity groups so it makes it feel like this is a race war or this is a war against prejudice when in reality, it's a war against something bigger. It is a war against Americanism. Other things that maybe that war would be against would be this. For instance, when you come down to individuality, individualism breeds competition, right? Does that make sense? I'm in control of what I do and what I produce. So I should be able to have the job that I want to have. I should be able to do the work that I want to the job I want to have. And I should be able to keep what I earn, right? That's this individualism. It breeds competition. Competition is what capitalism is all about. The number one enemy of Marxism is capitalism. In fact, you can't even have a socialist revolution, a Marxist revolution. You can't even have a Marxist revolution until capitalism has basically done its evil work, okay? I'm putting evil work in scare quotes if you can't see me because I'm not saying that I think that. I'm saying that that's what Karl Marx thought. There is no greater enemy to Marxism than capitalism. Capitalism breeds competition. Competition leads to equality of process, but not equality of outcome. That's what competition is. Well, the other side doesn't like that. They for one thing, they do hate capitalism in theory anyway. In fact, Americanism is really kind of synonymous with capitalism, by the way, but that's a part of what they really hate about Americanism. But they also hate inequality of outcome. And what that means is that they hate any sort of, I can do my job, that person can do their job, I end up with 10 apples, they end up with 6 apples. That is an evil thing in their minds. Everybody needs to have the same. Now, that is obviously a socialistic utopian idea, but it comes from this equality of outcome situation. That is absolutely antithetical to what capitalism is about. Capitalism is about competition. It's about I'm the master of my fate. However hard I work, however hard I study, this and the other, then maybe I can get a leg up, kind of a thing. Now that also leads to the idea of the self-made man. That is a very American thought. Okay, the self-made man, and all the world thinks of Americanism as being that way. Frederick Douglass is someone that talked about the self-made man. He was a former slave turned philosopher and all sorts of stuff. Frederick Douglass is amazing, by the way. But this is a country that obviously we had incredible, great sense. Frederick Douglass was a former slave. But it is a country that actually does have opportunities for people to rise up. Doesn't excuse the horrors of the past, doesn't excuse the horrors that Frederick Douglass went through, but there is a recognition of the self-made man that is made possible because of the engine of individualism and capitalism. I'm not saying it always works out fair. I'm not saying the process is always fair. Different people start in different places. So in that sense, it's maybe not true meritocracy because I may have been born into a wealthier family than you have. So it's not exactly a meritocracy in that sense, but you are free to make your own decisions and to rise up. That is an engine of capitalism, all right? So these are very different ideas. One of the pillars of America that you cannot deny is the pillar of Judeo-Christian ethics, Judeo-Christian values, morality, Judeo-Christian philosophy, whatever you want to call it. You can't take that out of America. That is what America was built on. And that is absolutely one of the things that the revolution is coming against. Here's what I mean by that. In fact, it's not just America built on Judeo-Christian ethics. It's actually all of the West really built on Judeo-Christian ethics. Number one, the idea that man is not good. That is a principle that this country was built on. And that, again, that's the reason that means that government won't be good. Well, the revolution believes that man is good. Now, this isn't just about like saying, oh, that's just a point of philosophy. Why does it really matter? Because the revolution believes that some people are enlightened to take us to utopia. And we don't need God to do that. And that's not about an individual thing. There are people that are chosen to do that. They have more vision. They are more evolved, whatever you want to call it. That is part of the philosophy. And so if you believe that man is good, then if you just get the right people to do it, then it'll all be fine. And that is why socialism and communism ends up being tyrannical, because the idea was great. The idea is we all need to have the same stuff and nobody needs to have more money than someone else. And we all need to have equity and this and this and this. By any means necessary, give me all the power and I will make sure that you're all taken care of. And everybody goes, that's really, really great. What they forget every single time is that tyranny always leads to death. Millions and millions of people dead, okay? That's what communism has led to. What estimated 120, 150 million people killed in communistic dictatorships, all right? So Marxism has been tried a whole lot of times. We got about 120 million deaths from it, all right? But that is what the revolution believes. They believe we can find utopia, and there will be people that are more gifted to do that than just, in other words, they're wiser, they're smarter, they're the superhumans, they're the supermen. Everyone else is a little bit kind of dumb. And we see that even in American politics already, right? That's why the middle of the country, they always say, is like the rural vote. That's a hard word to say. Rural, the rural vote. And they say, oh, they're kind of dumb. And then you have the coastal elites. The coastal elites actually do believe they are more evolved. They are smarter. They are more intellectual. And if they could just make the decisions for you, you actually would be, you don't know what's good for you, but I do. So just give me the reins. Let me figure it out, and you are going to be taken care of. That is not American. That is antithetical to what America was founded on. That's a really big difference. Part of that is because of the philosophy based on Judeo-Christian values, all right? Other things in that would be the belief in the family. Again, it's the belief that me and my wife should be able to raise my kids the way that I want to, that the family is an institution ordained by God. Even the founders that weren't Christians believed in that sort of ethic, okay? It was ethics from Judeo-Christian belief that the family is instituted by God, and a righteous country, a country that thrives, would be a country that would recognize that virtue. The revolution absolutely wants to tear that down. And I know some people are like, John, you're just that's not true. It is true. I don't know why Christians won't just go read Karl Marx. It won't take you long. You'll read like one chapter and you'll be like, I don't like this. This is just absolutely stupidity in my view. So go read Karl Marx and you will find out that yes, Karl Marx did think that the family needed to be done away with. Yes, Karl Marx did think that religion needed to be done away with. Why? Because all that religion is, he calls it the opium of the masses. We all know that, right? This is just kind of what they do to get them by. But once we take care of them, once I take care of the people and I give them what God can never give them, they will have no use for God. The state becomes God. The state becomes the father. They don't need fathers. They need the state. I will take care of the kids. So they absolutely want to see the dissolution of the family. And for anybody that says, Karl Marx, that was back then, that's 1850 or whatever, that's not now. It is now. You know how I know? Because I read the Black Lives Matter website. They tell you. They want to do away with the nuclear Western family or whatever. They want to do with heteronormative culture is what they call it. Basically what they want to do is override what the West was built on: capitalism, individualism, Judeo-Christian ethics found in the nuclear family, and yada, yada, yada. They want to overturn that because they believe it's an evil thing. Now we're getting into what the revolution is about, all right? It might seem like it's about some equity and it's about social justice. It's not actually about social justice. They're making it seem like that's what it is because it is a revolution against Americanism. And I don't care if you love America or don't love America. I'm not saying that. This isn't like Mr. Patriotic, America or die. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the principles that this country was based on that all of us take for granted were good things like individualism, hard work, yada, yada. I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove to you why they are trying to dismantle all of those things. Okay, a few months ago, I know I've said this several times, the Smithsonian put something on their website for the African American Culture of Arts Museum, right? They put it on their website, which was supposed to be an anti-racist campaign. And they had a chart of what they call whiteness. I've already said this a few times. On their chart of whiteness, they listed out things that are considered like white behavior. They are a product of whiteness. And for people of color who, maybe if they connect or if they agree or if they believe in some of these aspects of whiteness, then that means people of color have actually internalized whiteness. And they're letting you know this is an anti-racist campaign. These are the things you don't need to think because this is white people stuff. On that list were things like this: Protestant work ethic. All right. Now, before I list these out, I just want to say this. I find this to be highly racist stuff. I do not think that, this is what white people are into and that black people aren't into this. I find it really offensive. I didn't write it, but this is part of the thing. Protestant work ethic, objectivity. What was some of the other ones? Monotheism. Basically what they want to do is they want to say this: all the things that America is built on is basically whiteness, is what they're saying. It's all whiteness. And if you're a person of color, but you kind of believe in some of these things, then you have internalized it. So you're not being a black voice. You see what I'm saying? You're not being a black voice. Well, amazingly, all the things that they don't like are things that America was built on. It. We would call it Americanism. America was known for her work ethic. That was one of the things that you'll notice in old, what's the old history book? Can't remember the name of it. The French guy. Who's the French guy? Well, I can't remember his name. The French guy that came to America and he wrote a history of America that's really, popular. I've read some of it. Can't remember his name. Point is one of the things that he notices and that became world renowned is that Americans were known for bragging about their work ethic. They were hard workers. They worked all day and all night, and they weren't complaining about it. They actually bragged about it. Like, this is a part of who we are. This is our identity as Americans. That could be seen because of the I'm an individual. I have freedom to work how I want to work and to keep to keep the fruits of my labor. That's a very American thing. And not only that, by the way, working hard is a biblical truth. That is actually a biblical command, all right? So this idea of working hard is just like a white thing. It's actually a biblical command. So I think that Christians, in 2020, all that Christians think that matters in the whole world is social justice. But the Bible says we should help the poor and the oppressed. The Bible also is very, very harsh against lazy people and the idle, people that sit around idle and sloths, people that aren't willing to work. I am not suggesting everybody that's poor is not willing to work, so don't send me a comment. That's not what I said at all. I'm just trying to say the Bible commands that we work hard. That is a biblical thing that pleases the Lord. On the list of whiteness that I told you on the museum, on the list of whiteness is Protestant work ethic, monotheism, the scientific method, objectivity. Objectivity is going, well, I don't really know if that's true. I know it might feel true and it might seem that way, but let's look at some science behind it. Look at some statistics. Let's really brainstorm and see if this is actually the best way to solve a problem. That's called objectivity. And apparently that's something that white people are into. So I find this really racist against black people, by the way. I just think it's offensive. I don't believe it. I know lots of black people that say, that crap's offensive. That's not right. And I think it is too. They're the one that put it on the thing. That is because they are trying to use our terrible, shameful history of racism in this country, which is true and which is real. They're trying to use that as the tip of the spear for a revolution against Americanism. This is not actually about race. And it is the reason that Black Lives Matter Inc. on the website, that all the stuff they mention, Black Lives is hardly mentioned on the thing. I'm not saying they don't care about Black Lives at all, but it's a really small part. Black Lives Matter Inc. is more about LGBTQ than it is Black Lives. How do I know this? Oh, I read the website. It's obvious. Go listen to an interview. And so you have to ask yourself the question, how in the world did, freedom fighters against, the oppression of blacks in America join up with a movement so highly, highly fueled by LGBTQ? It's more to do with LGBTQ than it is with Black lives. Even with the dismantling of the family, dismantling of heteronormative culture, blah, blah, blah. How did all of these things come together when in reality, most people know that, again, statistically saying it, this is my objectivity here talking, that historically the black community is less comfortable with LGBTQ stuff than the white community. That's just something that people know. It's where, like, being on the DL, being on the down low, stuff like that. It is just being gay in the black community was just not very acceptable. How in the world did these things come in as a voice for one giant movement of revolution? It's not actually about race, you guys, and the media is lying about it. Why would the media lie about it? Because they suck. I already said it. They suck. The media is all in on the revolution, you guys. This is what's so funny is it's like some people still have this idea that the media is kind of like, all we want to know is the truth. No, they don't. they've already chosen a side. They don't like America either. It's absolutely true. Do this. Go back and look at tweets on July 4 and see how many people in the media tweeted something good about America. You're not allowed to say anything good about America. You're not allowed to say, I love this country. I love capitalism. No media person is talking how they love capitalism because they don't. They're not going to put out stuff about individual hard work. The media does not like America. And if they do secretly like America, they can't say because woke people will put them into Twitter prison. You're not allowed to say it. The media has already chosen a side and they are rooting for revolution. One of the reasons you know they're rooting for revolution is because remember when I said that the philosophy, the vision is that there will be people that are more enlightened than the average people. So you have like all the common people, and then there's a few people above them who actually are enlightened enough that if we just give them the power, they will lead the way because they're more intellectual, they're smarter, they're more gifted, they're more evolved. The media thinks that's them. They think that they're like, yeah, that's us actually. We believe that, and it's me. That's what they believe. So they believe they already hold the keys to the kingdom. They're like, hey, I got the keys. Yeah, anyway. All right, there's an awesome article you got to see on this by a guy called John McWhorter. I'm a big fan of John McWhorter. I will put his name up on the screen because I want you to go and Google it and read this guy. So I'm going to write it right here. If you're listening and you're not watching, his last name is spelled McWhorter, McWhorter. John McWhorter is a linguistics professor, genius kind of political guy. Excuse me, not political, I should say political philosophy guy. He is black and he just writes amazing stuff. He knows history, he knows languages, and yada, yada, yada. He wrote an awesome article on this about rethinking racism in police. And he basically said in a much smarter way than I could because I'm such a moron, what I tried to say a few months ago that I had no idea was even going to be controversial. I thought it was so obvious that nobody could possibly get mad because I'm stupid and naive and dumb. But he basically said the same thing I did, which is this. He lists people that have been killed by the police. He's like, this guy was, running from the police and they caught him. They put a knee in his back until he suffocated. He lists his name. You've never heard of the guy because he's white. And so basically what they're saying is that every awful incident we have of police killing a black person or unarmed black person, whatever, we have an equal example of a white person also killed by the police. There are more white people killed by the police than black people. There are more unarmed white people killed by the police than unarmed black people. How come we don't know any of their names? You don't know a single one of their names because the media doesn't report it. Why doesn't the media report it? Because it's not sexy. It's not a good story. Because then what the story might become would just be, we need a revolution in America against, police tactics. But that's not near as compelling. That's not like near as sexy of a story as we need a revolution against systemic police racism. Now that is a good angle. So you see how I'm saying? The other one just doesn't sound exciting. But the obvious question has to be, why aren't they covering the fact that there's more white people killed than black people by cops? Why aren't we covering that? So the fact that we're not, you should go read his article. He says it, and he's a genius, and he's black, so don't get mad at me. He's the one that wrote it. Go check out the article. But the point is that the media is all in for the revolution. And every little thing that they see that fits into the revolution, they're like, yeah, that's the story we need. The tip of the spear is for race issues and for quality of outcome issues. And if we don't get it, then, we're going to break everybody up into groups and get everybody mad at each other until we have enough little identity groups that all think monolithically as one voice that we can all join together. And now we finally have the revolution that we are looking for, that we can overthrow these ideas of Americanism, American values, the things that we think we're based on that are actually nothing more than whiteness. They're nothing more than racism. They're nothing more than the ruling hegemony, and we need to overthrow it. Is there going to be a civil war in America? There already is. That is happening right now as we speak. Now, here's what I want to end with, because next week, we are going to jump into some stuff that I am really passionate about. And it's going to be an offshoot of this in which I will answer some of the questions that I started the podcast with from people last week. Because in the church, we are seeing a civil war disguised as a race war. And it's not about that. So we're going to jump into that. And I'm going to tell you why I'm so harsh about it. But let me say a few more things about this just as we get into it. The reason I wanted to break this down into what the revolution is right now for Americanism is because this is the way that you do a revolution, all right? This is the way it's been done historically. You put on your surgical mask, like I said last week, your little scalpel, and you start dissecting words, and you dissect them all up, and then you confuse people. That's the first thing you do. You see it all the time in politics. Bernie Sanders is somebody that does this a lot because he's a socialist. He's always taking words that we think we agreed on, like freedom and democracy. And then he says, our very democracy is in danger and we're losing our freedoms. And then all the normal people are like, oh, that really sucks. But all you got to do is look into what he's saying. He's redefined the word freedom. He's not talking about your individual freedom. He's talking about a collectivist freedom. In other words, if John Cooper, if I have more of an opportunity to go to Harvard than my next door neighbor, then that means that my next door neighbor doesn't have freedom. Do you see what I'm saying? We would call that freedom. I've got the freedom to do what I want to do, try to make my grades, try to get money, try to get a scholarship, yada, yada, yada. We see that as, again, equity, quality of process. My next door neighbor, I don't know what his situation is, but it's America. He can do what he needs to do, a quality of process. Nobody should cheat. I'm not saying to cheat, but as long as the process is fair, it's competition. Bernie Sanders says, no, that's actually not freedom. Freedom means that you should be free to have anything that someone else has. The Bible actually has a word for that. It's called envy, but it's just one of the 10. It doesn't really. All right, so moving on, the next thing you have to do for that revolution, so you change up the words, you have to go back and you have to change history. That's what's happened in revolutions in the past. You go back, you got to leave some of it intact. It can't just be like completely new, but you got to go back and you have to twist enough things to where you actually have changed the narrative of what history was, right? And there's been amazing satirical stories on this. By the way, if you want, I know I talk about 1984 a lot, but if you've never read the book 1984, it is the most genius story that we have, a fiction story, to basically show what actually happens in these revolutions. So go check it out. Go back and they change history. Well, America has already done that. We've already changed history. We have changed history to the degree that your kids, if you have kids in school, they have already been learning fake history, you guys. And you guys know about the 1619 Project. A lot of it is kind of accurate events, but they it's almost like change the viewpoint to the degree that it's just skewed. Some of the events are accurate, but the reasons behind it are skewed. And so it's funny because when Nicole Hannah-Jones wrote it for a New York Times a couple of years ago, she won a Pulitzer Prize for this. Old Pulitzer Prize, like former Pulitzer Prize winners, liberals, okay, came out and said, hey, this actually is not real history. This is actually skewed. This is fake history. And so she just basically bludgeoned them as a racist. That's how you win an argument. You're like, you're a racist. Boom, club them over the head. Done with that argument. And they argued about it. No, anybody that disagrees is a racist. Now they finally came out and said, well, we never said it was absolutely historically accurate. This is kind of like what could have been. It's a narrative. It's a viewpoint. It's a way to look at it. You know what that means? That is another way of saying it's just relativism. It's postmodern thought. There is no absolute truth. There are perceived truths. It's the way that I see it. And that's what this is. So your kids have already been taught things that just are not true, okay? For instance, what she teaches is that the reason that the American Revolution happened was from England was just because we wanted to keep slavery. That was it. It wasn't about other things. It wasn't about tyranny. It wasn't about, no taxation without representation. No. It was just about slavery, because all that we wanted to do was enslave people. And so it says things like that just aren't true. You got to go back and you got to go rewrite history. You change words. And now you say, it's like Bernie Sanders. Basically, Bernie Sanders says this: I'm more America than America. That's basically what he does. We like liberty, but I really like liberty. And if we don't have universal income for every single person in the world, then that's just not American. So he changes the words. You change the history. That's what's happened in revolutions in the past. Both of those things are already happening, by the way. You know what? Another thing that has to happen for the revolution. Oh, we're about to get into it. Now we're about to get into it, son. This is going to be stepping into what I want to talk about next week, which will be part 2. But let me give you a taste. Let me give you a foretaste. This is what I'm saying. One of the other things that has to happen for the revolution, because you got to convince enough, you got to shove propaganda down your freaking throat until people believe it. So what you have to do, and again, this was covered so well in the book 1984, but you have to get these propaganda. You have to use propaganda. You can't just blatantly lie, but you have to lie enough to where the propaganda seems kind of believable. And you repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until you believe it's true. So we have to have a lot of people repeat it. So what do we have to do? One of the things that's happened in history is there will be people that will repeat the propaganda because they believe the lie. And what that would be this: all that we want as your socialistic leaders, all that we want to do for you, for the revolution, all that I want to do for you is make sure that everybody has equal opportunity, equal food, equality of outcome. All I want to do is make your life better. And so I need you to go tell people that my regime, that my dictatorship is actually going to give that to them. Explain to them that they are actually in slavery now because they're not being treated equal and they're being oppressed and abused. But when I come and set them free, then their lives are going to get so much better. And what happens is there are people that go and they throw out all that propaganda that they believed. Then when the revolution happens and we find out, actually, now you're enslaved, now you're starving, literally. I don't mean like figuratively. You're literally starving to death. You know, millions of people starved under communistic regimes. Millions, because it doesn't work economically, all right? It's not just ideologically. Economically, it does not work. It has not worked. Literally starved to death. Start putting people in prison that disagree. People that go, hey, actually, we had more food than before. I think I might like the... Boom, you're dead. You're in prison or you're dead. Well, all of a sudden, you have all these people that never really understood the ideology, but they were promulgating it. Do you understand what I mean? There's a word that we have for this in politics and in history. They called them useful idiots. If you've ever been reading a book or some sort of political, article, and they say, these people are being used as useful idiots. This is what they're talking about. They're saying they're idiots. It's a mean word. I didn't make it up. I'm not calling anybody an idiot. It's what they're saying is they're idiots. They're uninformed. They're ignorant of what the regime actually wants to do. They actually just think that all it is social reform. And this literally happened in Italy. You had Christians that believed that the Communist Party was just going to be, it's social reform. This is how we help the oppressed. This is how we help the poor. This is what Jesus would do. And then when the revolution happens and you've got thousands of people being slaughtered and starved and imprisoned, they're like, this isn't what we wanted. Well, they're useful idiots. They were useful, but they were completely naive. What am I getting at? Are we seeing that happen in the revolution already? We are. That's what's happening with Christians. I said it. I don't even feel guilty. My career's already been hurt by Cooper stuff anyway. I'm just going for it. That is happening right now. That is what's happening in Christianity, you guys. Christians do not understand the revolution. All that they think is happening is like, oh, this is about race relations and racial reconciliation and empathy and compassion. And that's not what the revolution's about. It's not actually about racism, because at large, people in America don't like racism. We know that. You can go and Google, you're going to find tons of clips of white people bowing down to black people, crying to black people. You know what we have now? We've got white moms crying on Facebook to their biracial kids, their natural biological biracial kids that they had with their black spouses. That I am so sorry for my systemic racism. I had no idea that I was racist towards you, but I'm in a system of racism that I can't get out, and I've abused you and I've oppressed you. These are people that they gave birth to and they've raised and loved with agape love, taken care of, fed, clothes. We're there for them. This is their mom, all right? This is your mom. That's what's happening in America because white people are so ashamed of our past and we want things to be better. So it's not actually what's going on. So Christians are being used in a revolution as useful. I don't want to say the word idiots. I'm going to use the word innocence. They are innocents. They don't understand what's happening. They just think this is what Jesus would do. He loves the oppressed. True. This is what Jesus would do. He loves the poor people. True. As a Christian, I'm supposed to take care of poor people. True. As a Christian, I should hate racism. True. That's not what the revolution is, man. You are in the process of helping overthrow Americanism. Do I think that America is the kingdom of God? No. Do I care if America falls? Is like my hope gone? Well, I mean, I care, but my hope isn't gone. My hope is in Christ. Jesus is on the throne. It's not about America. But if you overthrow Americanism, you are going to be overthrowing the very pillar of Judeo-Christian ethics that you, I would assume, claim to believe in. If you believe in the family, if you believe that the government should not come into your life and tell you how to raise your kids, hello, we're seeing that right now. I'm just telling you right now. Some of you guys are going to think I'm crazy. We are not that far. Here we go. Okay, all I'm going to say is this. We are not that far from the government coming in and calling Christian parenting things that we have always believed, calling it abusive, calling it oppressive, calling it violent under all their new ideas of inclusion and everything else. The government is going to come in and start telling you how to raise your kid. I'm just saying, I'm telling you, that's the way it is. That is what's going to happen. We're not really that far from that. I'm just telling you. If you think, I don't think the government should come in and tell me how to raise my own kids. If you think that Judeo-Christian marriage is worth holding on to, if you think that Protestant work ethic is worth holding on to, then you're not going to want to see the revolution as it's happening. You are not going to like what you see. If you believe, let me say it like this, if you do not believe that coastal elites, if you want to call them that, or the media, or some, woke, celebrities or whoever, if you don't think that they would be better at running your life than you, then you do not want to be in this revolution. I don't know why Christians don't understand that they're coming for you, man. They're coming for me. Why? Because that is the ruling hegemony. Christianity's on the list. All you got to do is go look up intersectionality. Go Google intersectionality oppressors. Do it. Intersectionality oppressors. See who they list off as oppressors. White people, men, cisgendered, straight, and Christian. You're going to find out. I didn't know I was on the list. Yep, you're on the list. And they're coming to overthrow you, baby. So that's what I want to say. We are in the Civil War right now. That's already going on. The ideological Civil War is happening as we speak right now. Do I feel uber passionate about this Civil War? I feel passionate about it only because I love truth. My hope is not in America. My hope is not in living an easy life that I never get put in prison for my faith. I mean, I don't really want to go to prison for my faith, but that's not the end of the world for me, to be honest with you. I care about truth, and what I really, really care about is helping people. I just want people to be aware of the decisions they're making. Do you know what I mean? I don't want the revolution to happen and life to get a whole lot worse, and then some of my Cooper Stuff watchers out there, some of you Christian people, to be like, I feel so bad. I had no idea that's what the revolution was about. I didn't even know what I was fighting for. I want you to know what you're fighting for. That's what really bothers me. I want you to know what you are fighting for so you will not be ashamed on the back end when things go really bad. Is that definitely going to happen? I don't know. It's my opinion. That's where I think we're headed. Take it or leave it. Thanks so much for watching Cooper Stuff. Next week, we are going to jump into part 2, which I'm really passionate about. And then we're going to get down and dirty up in this. Thank you so much for watching Cooper Stuff. By the way, please check out my book. It talks about a lot of this stuff. Postmodernism, relativism, living in a world without truth. It's why we're so confused. We don't even know what American history to believe in. We don't even know if the media is lying to us or not. We don't know anything about anything because we don't believe in truth anymore. And I wrote a book about it. Check it out. Tell your friends about Cooper Stuff.
And to bring you on your knees because you have white privilege.
Read the Bible.
Cooper Stuff!